Digimon has a problem, and so does every other card game today. And no, it's not that they are all dying, or at least not exactly, besides Pokemon, Magic, and now One Piece, luring in weebs of all ages. Card games are kind of in a weird social space within the hobby sphere. We are a niche within a niche, or still being very much so a niche. Most players of Digimon fall into two categories. You're either a fan of Digimon, the franchise, and want to play a card game based around your favourite digital monsters, hoping to save the digital world one security check at a time, or the pandemic made your number one card game either impossible to play or game product for with delays. Some companies looking to reduce production due to sales started to dwindle. The Pokemon company did this just before the pandemic, which would end up being a double-edged sword for everyone involved in the hobby. Yu-Gi-Oh having some of its worst product delays that have only just started to settle down after nearly 3 years, as well as the 2021 having some of the worst formats for a lot of players. Digimon's release would make Konami wonder if the Digimon card game was the second coming of Cardfight Vanguard's uproar in the years gone past. So now, I'll set up the scene. We were the fourth best-selling card game. We could have been the third. Well, kids, I'll tell you like it is. And that's the problem. Kids aren't into card games. And if I was to speak to the children in my son's year and ask about Pokemon, they would, for the most part, understand what Pokemon was. But if I asked them if they would like to play the card game, most would decline, but would ask if they could keep the cards to look after.
Children's card game.
Haven't been for children since I was a child. And as a 34-year-old, I haven't been a child for over 16 years. I haven't been a school-aged child for nearly 20. I was 15 when I left school because I was born late into the school year. We have a lot of content creators using the cost of card games to farm views, as well as justification for why it gatekeeps people from playing insert card game name here of your choice, playing competitively for the most part, not necessarily for fun. But what is it stopping the youth of today getting into card games? The repetitive gameplay loop. In a world of the internet, where you can farm dopamine by absorbing hundreds of different content creators per day, why would a standard deck of cards with a solo game plan be interesting to the youth of today? Is this why security control is so popular? Because you're not playing the same game as everyone else is playing? So how do we fix this? We don't. A deck of cards is a random numbers generator, where a little skill and understanding, with a lot of luck, will make you an amazing player. Children just don't have the attention span, and a lot of children don't have the social cues to understand that a card game is a back and forth between two people. And to a degree, this is partly due to the pandemic keeping a lot of young children indoors for nearly 3 years, stunting their ability to be the social butterflies they should be. Unfortunately, there is no remedy to fix 3 years of imprisonment on one's ability to read and understand others. By throwing down a handful of shiny cardboard, keep yourself entertained. This is a learnt skill, a skill that can be learnt over a long, rainy afternoon, or months of bashing your head into a wall, trying to love something that just can't and won't love you back. But Agito, you said that Pokemon, Magic, and One Piece aren't having issues like the other 30 dozen card games out there in the big wide world of shiny cardboard. And to this I say, I did. The Pokemon franchise is the highest grossing media franchise in history. A few years ago, when the total revenues were around 92.1 billion, the split was 60% merchandise, 19% video games, 11% trading cards, 1.6% comics, and 2.4% movies. Yes, that's right, 11% of this media Goliath is the card game. Not too shabby for a card game based around catching bugs in the countryside of rural Japan. Pokemon is a phenomenon, where kids and parents love it so the happy world of gotta catch 'em all. A lot of children who love Pokemon have basically been absorbed into the weird cult-like phenomenon via their parents, and I'll put my hands up in the air and say I've tried to Pokemonize my children. They have no interest in becoming Pokemon cultists. I'm proud, honestly. But because the Pokemon company does make so much product that it's mass ripped by its consumers, making the majority of the cards easier to obtain, including multiple arts of key cards, keeping the lowest rarity even cheaper. The price of entry, even into the competitive side of the game, is even easier for parents who aren't cultists to stomach. spending £50 for a deck your child can play for up to its full rotation, which would be 2 years in Pokemon, must be one of the greatest things for parents, knowing your children's hobby costs less than a modern AAA game. Pokemon also understands that having multiple age brackets makes sense when children as young as 5 are competing in events, making it a lot more fair than what other card games do. To summarise, Pokemon product is widely available. Its secondary market is also fairly competitive, keeping prices low and fair for consumers. We call this a buyer's market. Pokemon, as a whole, is a very friendly place compared to a lot of the other card games. Magic the Gathering used to be seen as that card game played by the weird group of people in university talking about some flower being the best card in the game, the Black Lotus. Over the years, it has bled more into what would be considered the norm, as social media has helped push Magic into the world. Elder Dragon Highlander, a fan-made format using legendary creatures to command a deck of one-offs, this is what would be called a singleton format. This singleton format has become the face of MTG over the past half a decade or so. Commander is now the most popular way to play Magic, but this isn't the only way to play Magic. With Standard, Modern, Legacy, Pauper, Pioneer, Vintage, and CEDH. These are the terms you've probably heard if you've poked your head into the Magic sphere. Now, similarly to Pokemon, Magic does have a fairly cheap way to get into a few of these formats, called precons. A pre-made, constructed deck that you can play straight out of the box. Most of the time. Now, are these decks any good? The ones between £30 and £40? Hell no! You'll be so mad you spent money to get abused for a couple of hours, you'll wonder what's the point of it all. That's because precons are a gateway to spending lots more money over multiple weeks, while still being abused for multiple hours straight. So why is this form of torture so popular? Because people crave social interactions. For a long time, a lot of the people playing Friday Night Magic didn't really have somewhere else to be. Club and the nightlife wasn't for them. Gym bro lifestyle wasn't it is today. Getting a 6-pack while showing someone an infinite combo you've been working on since March of the Machines isn't cool, or at least as socially accepted. Friday Night Magic is probably as much of a parasocial relationship as Pokemon is a cult. So why is Magic doing so well? Well, if you listen to Hasbro, the company made 2% less in Q4 than expected, meaning that Magic is now ready for the local dump. But don't worry your pretty little heads. MTG made over $1 billion in 2023, so they might just see another quarterly evaluation. So besides lonely social awkward people, what is Magic doing to stay the second most popular card game? Well, we've already spoke about it. It has the most diverse and supported formats possible. Every single format we mentioned earlier is officially supported by Wizards and hosts events that have large prize support, incentives to play. Now, there's a weird final piece of this puzzle that Wizards has been doing over the past few years, and that is starting to ramp up this year, and that is Universes Beyond. A series of sets that focus on intellectual properties well known around the world, from Fortnite to Doctor Who to Lord of the Rings, with Fallout coming out soon as of writing this script. So to recap what Magic is doing to stay relevant in the world of the 101 card games. Magic has the most formats of any game that is fully supported by Wizards. Universes Beyond is keeping them relative with the world outside of the card game, as fans of these series are looking to pick up product to invest in to their own hobbies. And Friday Night Magic is such a well-known term in the card game world. The marketing team has been living off this success since 1996. Now this is where things get tricky, because we're not going to talk about One Piece, we're going to talk about the third best card game in the world. Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole, from everything you hear about it, shouldn't be as popular as it is. With decks costing thousands of dollars, awful printing practices from Konami, being slow to punch when it comes to bans and reprints, constantly using the Forbidden List as a way to sell the next greatest deck, we can all agree this happened multiple times in the past, and for the most part, unable to create anything original that is considered good on the TCG side of the game. On paper, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a mess, from the very top to the very bottom. Konami even made a 2-player newbie deck to try and get people into the game. As far as I'm aware, the deck was full of other cards with little to no synergy, not really showing or explaining anything other than what the comic book told you to do. I highly doubt if you shuffle the deck, you'd be able to play it. To do something that infuriated people so fast that the whole community agreed that it was an awful attempt at trying to get new people in, that actually it might be pretty rare that Konami got us all to agree on something, and maybe is a Konami win after all. So now that I've spent a couple of minutes throwing shade at Yu-Gi-Oh! And more so at Konami, why is Yu-Gi-Oh! The third most popular card game currently in the world? After Magic, I think we can all agree Yu-Gi-Oh has some of the most complicated gameplay of any other TCG, making it stand out. Unfortunately, this normally stands out as being one of the most key reasons why newcomers can't get into the card game. The barrier to entry for Yu-Gi-Oh is set so far above any of the big three, it's looking down and seeing ants. Yu-Gi-Oh often has a one deck format issue that most other card games try to avoid. They do this by at least trying to make 2 to 3 decks viable per format. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Pros will tell you that the Tier 0 formats are the best, mostly because it means they don't have to work as hard during competitions, and trying to figure out what they're going to run into and what you're playing against, and how to counter it. Because if everyone's running the same deck, the answer never changes. Besides these 50 or so top players, the other 200,000 players of Yu-Gi-Oh! Have to suffer this ill fate until a ban list comes in, or the next power creep set sweeps in, and hopefully lowers the price of competitive. Still making for a new player's nightmare, Royalty Collection did help with this a little bit for the secondary market, but the supply will run dry and the price on those staples will go up and up and up. Agito, I hear you say. You said one nice thing about Yu-Gi-Oh, then complained again. And to this I say, I have. Yu-Gi-Oh is anime nostalgia bait at its finest, with the first 5 seasons bringing in the use of the mechanics. DM showing you how to play the schoolyard version, with Battle City taking place showing you how to do the basic rules of the actual card game. JX takes the fusion deck and its many different styles, with contacts seen later in the series. 5D's brought in the synchro mechanic, showing a new way to play. Zexor brought with it the XYZ mechanic, layering up monsters to bring in a new way to play and using powerful effects multiple times. Then there's the pendulum mechanic, which Konami would like us to forget about. And Vane's brought to us the latest extra deck monsters, Lynx, making for what some might call today the reason we have such high skill playmakers. Then there's Sevens, but we'll talk about that one a little bit later. I would like to reiterate that I hold no malice for Yu-Gi-Oh, as I do enjoy the card game and what its content creators have been able to do over the last decade, making the game enjoyable, remembering why we have loved this game for so long. So Gito, how would you fix Yu-Gi-Oh if it's such a big mess? I hear you typing in the comment section, and to that I say, I wouldn't. But what I would suggest is bringing it over Sevens, and making that the new player card game for Yu-Gi-Oh! As Speed Doors was meant to be the TCG answer to Rush Doors before Rush Doors was even known outside of the Konami R&D planning section for the newest season of the anime. But let's recap this section and see what nice things I can say about Yu-Gi-Oh! As it stands, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is complex, making it a thinking duelist game. Be proud to be a part of a game where using your brain is the key part of playing the game itself. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has over 10,000 cards in rotation, as it's one of the few card games to be able to take a card from 2002 and use it in 2024 in a modern style format. Konami is still trying to make everyone happy, releasing support all year round for decks that you would thought had long been forgotten. The people at Konami, the OCG, love this game as much as you do, and you can see it. So Agito, what about One Piece? You see what's doing well, then talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! And I'll be honest, I know One Piece is selling out every competitive venue, like it's trying to show Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Magic how you sell out an event. But from what I hear, supplies are tight, and I've heard a lot of pirate versus pirates out there in these games. The game is young and new, similar to Digimon was back then. It's still got time to grow and move forward. With Bandai treating One Piece well, I hope One Piece could take the card game world by storm, as the manga and the anime have with many others. But Agito, if this is the end of the video, how do we fix card games from becoming extinct? And to that, my friend, I say, we don't. If card games end with millennials and Gen Z, then so be it. Love every second of what we have left.